Okay, lately I was watching a video called Stupidity of GDP per capita by Type Ashton. And she got quite a lot of views. Look at that. Good job for her. Anyways, I don't know. I didn't like that video, to be honest. And not because she criticized those idiots.
Per capita GDP in Mississippi overtook the UK.
Ontario inhabitants are now poorer per capita than inhabitants of Mississippi, and that's the poorest American state.
That is exactly what Europe's economy, GDP, is still where it was in 2009.
Cost of living is also a lot lower, though.
So what happens when economies don't grow?
My favorite statistic right now is that if the UK, France, or Germany joined the United States as the 51st state, it would become the poorest state in the Union, poorer than even Mississippi. Send this to your Europeans to remind them who the real hillbillies are.
I'm sorry, but are we really suggesting that countries like Spain, Italy, France, places with piazzas, sculpted marble, high-tech public transportation, and excellent centers of education and research are poorer than Mississippi? No offense to Mississippi, but come on now.
So, she's probably she's probably right about that. Actually, what all those guys were talking about was this. You see, nominal GDP. It has a few nice things going on with it. It is easy to measure, probably better proxy for trade power. Like, let's say you want to buy international arms or you want to buy international oil, then this one is nice. That's how you measure trading power. But it is US dollar dependent, which is really, really bad. Because if the US dollar goes up, then the US figure is overblown. It looks much, much, much better, the US GDP, compared to the GDP of other countries. But this works also the other way around. If the US dollar is over several years very decreased, like very depressed, then the nominal GDP of the United States would look worse than it really would be. So, like, overall, she elaborated the topic of how one would measure economic strength of countries. And my take would be this measure, GDP in PPP, is probably the best. And this measure, she suggested, is probably the worst, because this is not an income measure. Like, this one is bad, evil. Okay. So, why do I think this one is the best one? Let me explain. It's unfortunately harder to measure because while here you can look what countries produce in dollar terms, you just need to convert it. Here you can't do that. You have to know what equivalent goods are. If you engage a carpenter, probably the amount you pay in China is in quality the same as the amount of carpenting you get in the United States. But if you buy, let's say, a typical American car, probably the typical American car is better than the typical car in India. That would be seen as equivalent to the American car. So that's the issue with this one. But the nice thing about this one is this actually puts into account that not everywhere labor is as costly as elsewhere. Neither labor nor capital. Like, usually the production is defined by the function of labor and capital. And labor and capital are not the same price everywhere. Often in industrial nations, capital sometimes even is cheaper than usually compared to labor. But labor prices, they really make shit expensive in rich countries. So that one needs to know, kind of. So the issue with both of those measures is actually both underestimate the income of poor countries. I can even explain how they underestimate. Let's compare a really poor country, Nigeria, let's say, to the USA. In Nigeria, you usually both countries have a real estate infrastructure and real estate industry. In Nigeria, however, okay, I don't know Nigeria that well, but a significant portion of the real estate is built by landowners. Like a farmer has a small plot of land and then he builds his house on top of it. It's a low quality house, it's not the best house, it could probably be better, but it's a house and it probably even has a toilet in it. In the United States, this house is built by companies and usually by companies, and this house finds its influence in the GDP, is included in the GDP data. In Nigeria, this house is not included in the GDP data. This farm is also probably not included in the GDP figure because most of the products in these farms are consumed by the people who are living in this house. So this country looks in the books poorer than that country because this country has an agrarian economy, while this country has an industrial or service economy. This is very important. And because the US dollar is the world's most important currency, reserve currency, that's why usually the US dollar is overvalued compared to whatever the currency is here. So that's why this measure, nominal GDP, overestimates the economy of rich countries and especially of the United States double. Like first in this kind of example, and then also because of the US dollar being the reserve currency. While here they try to adjust as good for that kind of situation as they can, but probably they still underestimate the real extent of the Nigerian economy, because this family usually doesn't need any kind of government supply or any kind of trade. Like this household doesn't rely on trade. And let's say they help a neighbor to build their house. This is mostly not exchanged with labor. Like there's no monetary exchange in this process. So this measure also underestimates the income of poor countries, but not that much. So what do we make out of it? Those idiots, Jordan Peterson and the rest of the bunch, they take these numbers they take. And they take the per capita numbers. The per capita numbers of these. While this one is a better measure, a better proxy, I would say. And this measure is probably the worst measure you can use. It's basically between 1 and 0. 1 would mean one guy owns everything, 0 would mean one guy nobody owns everything, but everybody owns the equal amount of income. Like everybody has the same income, total communism, nightmare of the Christian conservatives. This one, well, this one is probably the dream, the wet dream of Saddam Hussein. So, yeah, that's the case. Okay, then let's come to the honorable mentions. Electricity consumption per capita. Again, all those honorable mentions have problems of their own. Makes USA look richer again. How, you would ask? The USA has not a big population density. Cities are far apart from each other, which means transportation costs increase. That's why this measure would make the USA look richer again, because people spend more money on transportation in general. But Europe has a lot of trains, and Japan has also a lot of trains, and also Japan has very, very dense cities, so you don't need to spend so much money on transportation. Let's come to the next one. Power consumption. Okay, electricity and power are not the same thing. This would also include stuff like oil. Wait, sorry. I mixed the explanations up. The point here is that people in the United States live in the tendency they have bigger apartments because they have a lot of land. They need to heat that land, and they need to have air conditioners on and that kind of stuff that increases electricity consumption. This power consumption is what I explained last time. And this would make the United States, Russia, Saudi Arabia look richer, because these countries, and these countries, they have all a lot of electricity, a lot of oil, dinosaurs, no idea how it's written. And yeah, that's the issue with those countries. And like petroleum is cheap there, and that's why they use it a lot there. So this would make these countries look richer. And then Human Development Index. This index would make Japan, China, Europe look richer because they have free education and free healthcare, which makes the life expectancy in these countries look higher, and the education level looks also better. So that's probably also not a good measure. But among those ones, it's probably either the best or second best. World Happiness Index, no idea how it works. Don't know, don't care. So yeah, that's basically how it works. The conclusions she draws was
measuring a country's gross domestic product per capita and comparing
she makes good criticisms actually along the way, but at the end, fuck it. You got what I mean.